Hello everyone, my name is Sanjana Buddi, and for my design project presentation, I'll be going into conquering period poverty with technology. I have included an APA citation of the research paper that I used in order to base my findings on. I will now be going into the formal definition of social informatics as presented by Rob Kling. A more formal definition of social informatics is the interdisciplinary study of the design, uses, and consequences of information technologies that takes into account their interaction with institutional and cultural contexts. I'll be now presenting the official definition of period poverty as discussed by the American Medical Women's Association. Period poverty refers to the inadequate access to menstrual hygiene tools and educations, including but not limited to sanitary products, washing facilities, and waste management. Now I'm going to be going over the overview of the product. Here's my pitch. I would like to establish a website that would be made through the collaboration of nonprofits and companies involved in women's health, specifically in producing menstrual products. I'd like to provide communities around the globe with access to education on menstruation, period poverty, and information on products that they can use to manage their menstruation. This website will have videos on empowerment and the consequences of not understanding why it's important to have access to affordable sanitary products, along with providing people with options on how and where to get access to these products. In order to get funding, I'd like to provide links to our sponsors' websites in order for them to advertise their menstrual products and display how much they were able to donate towards ending period poverty. And finally, I'd like to establish a support center where menstruators can contact us with any concerns that they may have about getting access to products and promoting our cause. Now, I'm going to be going into some significant statistics that have impacted the way that I view period poverty. I'd like to start off by mentioning that 500 million people who menstruate lack access to menstrual products and hygiene facilities. 35 states in the United States tax menstrual products from 4.7 to 9.9%. And finally, 36% of people who menstruate in Uganda lack access to safe menstrual products. I've also included an APA citation of where I received these statistics from and a graph indicating a few more statistics around the affordability of menstrual products. I will now be going into the main questions that I was able to bring up around this topic and social informatics. Given the possibility of publishing this website, there are several questions that are raised concerning the potential ways that human beings will interact with the website. What are significant social steps that can be assisted with the use of technology that need to be taken in order to address the issues surrounding access to menstrual supplies? And my second question is, considering the significant advancements of technology in the past few decades, what are the underlying issues that cause for menstrual taboos to persist? Here are a few of the constraints that I was able to notice that would come up when producing this product. As expected, there is a technology constraint. I understand that a majority of the communities that I would like to assist are typically underserved and may not have access to the technology that they would need in order to access this website. However, through this initiative, I believe that we could funnel in requests from students in order to set up digital classrooms to help girls get access to education and learn more about technology. The best way to end period poverty is by providing students with a holistic education, letting them understand more about themselves and how to prioritize staying in school. I've also been able to notice that in a lot of studies, there was quite a few mentions about negative attitudes amongst educators in educating with new technologies and tools, and how that can be seen as a barrier to the development and implementation of online learning. Educators noted feeling overwhelmed with the entire process of engaging with new tools and having little patience for navigating minor technical issues. I would like to provide information videos on how to navigate the platform and how to navigate the website as a whole in order to help educators feel a little bit more comfortable when trying to use our platform to educate students. I understand that there is a fundraising constraint. I'd like to partner up with hundreds of nonprofits that already exist in prioritizing women in STEM and women in technology. Not only would this be an amazing project to partner up with in order to benefit both causes, but we would be able to get access to hundreds of dedicated students that could promote our message. However, I do understand that it is important to ensure that we have a handful of experienced software engineers to perfect the website and prove to investors that this is a legitimate and reliable funding project. Although it would be ideal to find volunteers, we can always hire people to get the project started. So as I was trying to explain, although it could potentially be possible to start off this platform fully funded by nonprofits with dedicated software engineers, I understand that we can always gain funding from period product companies or from hedge funds if it comes to that. But the most important thing that we need to focus on is the social constraint and the stigma around menstruation and period poverty. I'm going to be going into the taboo around menstruation now. To begin, menstruation was stigmatized throughout civilizations and presented as something unclean and impure, and veiled in silence. Menstrual stigma has always been a significant impact on women and girls. Menstruation was rarely freely discussed, and as a result, it was extremely difficult to obtain correct information or seek help. Negative views towards menstruation were internalized and reflected in the model as self-imposed demands to keep menstrual status disguised, as well as guilt and anguish at the prospect of having their periods disclosed. Gender norms also affected menstrual experiences by influencing information, behavioral expectations, and social support. Female proprietary expectations and women and girls' responsibilities as daughters, wives, and mothers limited resource availability and restricted caregiving activities and travel outside the house, interfering with more direct contributions to menstruation experience. In the research paper that I studied, the compilation of research papers that were observed looked at the connections between menstruation and infrastructure, particularly water and sanitation. Women and girls said that they needed somewhere to do things like changing menstrual materials, wash and dry menstrual materials, and clean their hands and bodies during their periods. Such areas were frequently inaccessible or underserved by women's needs. I will now be going into the impact of the study. The study emphasizes the need for practitioners and policymakers to attend to menstruation to improve the physical and psychological health, educational attainment, and social participation of women and girls. Menstrual experience is characterized not only as the hygiene practices undertaken to manage menstrual bleeding, but by women's and girls' perceptions of these practices, their confidence to manage menses and engage in other activities while menstruating, and their experience of shame and containment. This is a direct quote from the study. In sum, this systemic review of metasynthesis had two overarching objectives. One, to synthesize and appraise the extent qualitative research on women and girls' menstrual experiences, and two, to interpret findings across studies to develop an integrated model of menstrual experience, mapping relationships between contributing factors, menstrual experience, and the consequences of poor experiences for health and well-being. 2. Women's and girls' perceptions of their menstrual practices and environments emerged as a critical independent theme, connecting practices to their other impacts such as school absenteeism. And from that, I was also able to understand that resource deficits contributed to economic and physical environments that limited women's choices for menstrual practices and shape their experiences of menstruation. Here are a few solutions that are offered through the platform. 1. We want to make sure that we encourage menstruators to require their governments to help them in providing enough infrastructure and access to inexpensive menstrual products. 2. We want to make sure that there's increased information sharing and education. Knowledge sharing between organizations, communities, and schools may involve menstruators in the dialogue and give education without shame. Furthermore, I already discussed how my initiative will take on the extra efforts of trying to provide underserved communities with technology, and by providing them with technology, they will also get access to our platform. 3. Businesses may help to destigmatize menstruation by providing information and access to facilities and goods, as well as incorporating period management into companies' policies. 4. Philanthropic programs. We want to work with programs that can educate menstruators, offer essential supplies, and provide support to individuals and communities. 5. We want to provide support for research needed to better understand the impacts of period poverty and how to counteract it, especially with the focus on using technology to counteract period poverty. And finally, we want to push the public to promote protective legislation that can to guarantee suitable facilities and menstrual hygiene supplies and ensure that they are available at a reasonable cost. One significant way that we can do this is by promoting the understanding that governments can also lower the cost of menstrual products by eliminating taxes on products. Period products are not a luxury, they're a necessity, so they should not be taxed in the first place. Thank you so much for listening to my presentation.